It all started on February 18th when I was searching for another study on addiction to nicotine. Because the following day, on February 19th, I had a meeting with Farid Shemo, who serves in the Michigan Department of Public Health. And because he's a scholar at the MSU, I had to be updated. I was very surprised to see the latest search published on September 2018 by the National Institute on Drug Abuse. I didn't understand why they keep searching what caused the addiction to nicotine, because they already found it 30 years ago. So the fact that nicotine, like other drugs, raises dopamine level in the brain is known for more than 30 years. However, smokers still do not know that. As a matter of fact, most people addicted to drugs, fattening food, gambling, porn, and other substances or behavioral addictions do not know about the involvement of dopamine with their addiction. 7 years ago, in 2012, Dr. Noah Volkow, the director of the National Institute on Drug Abuse, gave important information about the real cause of most addictions and why it is so hard to quit them. In the beginning of the interview, Dr. Volkow explains why it is so easy to get addicted. Let's hear it.
What's your poison, your addiction? Is it legal or illegal? Whatever it is you're hooked on, from coffee to cocaine, smoking pot to pigging out, Nora Volkow has your number. She's the head of the National Institute on Drug Abuse. For 3 decades now, Volkow has been looking literally into the brains of addicts, not just hard drug users, but smokers and overeaters too. One of hundreds of drug abusers Volkow and her staff have examined over the years, zeroing in on a critical substance, dopamine.
Dopamine so happens to be one of the main chemicals regulating pleasure centers in the brain. And as such, it's therefore the mechanism by which nature motivates our behavior.
At the most basic level, dopamine has saved us from extinction by making the key elements for survival of the species, food and sex, pleasurable.
The key element to understand addiction lies in our ability to feel pleasure from food and sex for the survival of the human race. That's why fattening food and porn are the leading addictions in modern Western countries. But what causes people to be addicted to all kinds of drugs and behaviors?
What happens with repeated administration of these drugs is that the ability of them to generate this sense of pleasure decreases and decreases and decreases. And there's a point where the person starts to take them not to feel good, but to feel normal.
Dr. Volkow says that as time passes, the drug does not bring the same pleasure, but it keeps the addict feel normal. So if a drug raises dopamine and the addict is using the drug throughout the day, therefore he lives on a high dopamine level. And the symptoms of quitting are also the symptoms of low dopamine. Now let's hear what Dr. Volkow has to say about using willpower to quit addictions.
What do you make of that common phrase, just say no?
If it were so easy, I think that we would have no problem of obesity, we would have no problem with drugs. I think that we have to be honest. We've all been in a situation where we were tempted by something, and we didn't want to do it, and we didn't have the self-control to stop it. For example, I love chocolates, everybody knows that, and I love also coffee. But I'm a very wired person, so I shouldn't drink more coffee. But sometimes I cannot resist it, and that is because not always I have the same level of self-control. So saying to someone, just say no, is magical thinking.
Every smoker who tried to quit and experienced relapse can testify that one day the urge to smoke only one cigarette was stronger than not to light it. So using willpower to quit addiction is just a setup for the next relapse. Now, an important study discovered which part of the brain hosts the addiction. Let's listen.
During a brain scan, a cocaine addict was shown a nature scene. The image created no change in dopamine levels. The same test with a picture of someone using cocaine result a marked rise in dopamine.
Here, in an addicted person, you're starting to get the conditioned stimuli
from a photograph.
From observing. And that's why drugs are so malignant. You see a stimuli, dopamine goes up in your brain, and that in turn drives the behavior of the person to try to get the drug. And that's an unconscious thing. It's not even conscious.
Did you hear that? Let's listen again.
And that's an unconscious thing. It's not even conscious.
Dr. Volko clearly stated that the addiction sits in the subconscious. However, how many addicts know that? How many of you from the general public have heard about the involvement of the subconscious in the addiction and in the fear of quitting? And how many smokers know that fighting the subconscious with the willpower is a proven method for the next relapse? Now, Dr. Volko, through a personal story, strengthened the connection between addiction and the subconscious and the difficulty to quit.
The Russian revolutionary leader forced into exile after a power struggle with dictator Joseph Stalin.
I remember very clearly being extraordinarily scared to go into the room where Trotsky was killed. I would not be able to do it in the darkness. Something remains there.
So ghosts in a way.
Ghosts in our brain through the memory.
Now it's clear. The unreal fear in the memory, or what Dr. Volko calls the ghost in the memory, is the real reason why quitting is so hard. And in case of addiction to nicotine, the smoker is afraid something terrible is going to happen, that he's going to gain weight, be miserable all the time, and get angry at anything. My students admitted every time they quit, they still had fears that made them believe that they are going to fail and relapse back to the addiction. Now, all humans like to feel the good sensation of high level of dopamine, but besides drugs and other destructive addictions, there are many natural positive ways to achieve it. Dr. Volko is using one of them. Let's take a look.
She starts each day with a 7-mile run, getting a healthy dose of dopamine.
Okay, what we have learned so far from Dr. Volko is one, when using the addictive drug or even when thinking about it, dopamine level in the brain goes up. 2, the fear from quitting is unreal and it resides in the memory. And both the unreal fear and the memory are in the subconscious. 3, there are many natural healthy ways to raise dopamine level. Therefore, I expected from the Institute to look for a solution to addictions based on their findings. However, as we are about to hear, Dr. Volko is looking for something else. Let's listen.
We know that drug addiction is a chronic disease. It changes, drugs change the brain, physically change it, and those changes are very long-lasting and persist for a long period of time after the person stops taking the drug.
And looking forward down the road, she sees a day when science might banish the curse of addiction.
A cure would be fantastic, and that means you get a medication like an antibiotic, I cure you.
Volkov's labs and others around the country are working to develop vaccines to block drugs from entering the brain. The complexities are enormous and progress is slow.
After I heard that, I had to disagree with the doctor. Because back in the 70s of last century, the World Health Organization announced that smoking is a chronic disease. That's why Chantix was developed specifically for nicotine addiction. However, how many chronic diseases are treated with medications for only 3 months? And the latest study, published in Addiction magazine on May 2018, shows only 8% success within 1 year from time of quitting. Any medication developed for chronic disease that shows such a low success rate requires more studies to develop new medication. And that's what they're trying to do in the past 30 years. Yes, it will be wonderful to develop medication to treat addiction with antibiotic like treating inflammation. However, Dr. Volkow understands the vital importance of dopamine in our well-being. And after Chantix failed to deliver what they expected, it might be a better idea to find vaccine for addictions. But the question is how selective the new vaccine will be. Because if they find a way to block drugs from entering the brain, which drugs the vaccine will be able to block? Is it cocaine, heroin, and amphetamine that is affecting relatively a few people? Or is it going to block drugs like sugar, nicotine, porn, and gambling that's affecting the majority of addicts? Now, can you imagine how the food industry or the state of Nevada are going to react if such vaccine will be available? But we shouldn't worry about it for now. Here's why.
We're not there yet, but perhaps one day we may be.
You see, they are not there yet. And this 60-minute program was produced in 2012, 7 years ago. And who knows, maybe one day they might be there. Maybe. But until Dr. Volkow finds a way to develop antibiotic or vaccine for addictions, maybe it is better to notify the public that addiction is not to drugs, that most of them clears out of the body within a short period of time after quitting. The addiction is to the positive feeling of high dopamine level felt in the mind after using the drug. And this positive feeling stored in the memory for time of need. That's when relapse happened. Therefore, the true addiction is to a high level of dopamine, which all humans like to feel.